At number 10, we have Dajjal. The appearance of the Antichrist called Dajjal is a big one. However, Dajjal is not actually mentioned in the Quran, only in the Hadith. Apparently, he will be a Jew that's born in Iran to parents who have not had any children for 30 years. He'll also have only one eye, and he'll claim to be a prophet. He'll deceive a lot of people by performing miracles, and the Hadith mentions that he'll have the word infidel or unbeliever written on his forehead. Now, I actually did a full video on Dajjal, and if you haven't seen it already, I have a link to that down below. Check it out, it's very interesting. At number 9, women outnumbering men 50-1. This is one of the minor signs of the end times in Islam, that women will outnumber men by a 50-1 ratio. Now, no reason is actually given, but Muslims do speculate that this could be due to men that will give their life for their faith or other military duties where women aren't necessarily as much involved as men are. Then this would eventually impact the total amount of men alive versus women alive, so the ratio will tip. The beast comes in at number 8, but this is not too scary because it's a good beast. So before the time of the end, there's going to be this good beast that comes from out of the earth. And now the beast will tell the world to recognize Allah as the supreme God. The beast will wear a ring of King Solomon, another prophet from the Quran, as well as he'll carry the rod of Moses, which is also a prophet. Also, those who reject this message will have the word infidel also written on their foreheads, similar to Dajjal. The great fire is next. So there's going to be a great fire that breaks out from the south of Eden, which today is actually known as Yemen. Now this blaze will spread worldwide, and it's going to be so intense that it's going to drive everybody to the place of final assembly just before the day of resurrection. Now that place will be in Syria, which includes modern day Palestine. All people are subjected to 2 judgments. There's that preliminary judgment at death, and then the final judgment at the time of resurrection. There's also the reign of Jesus. Jesus will proclaim Islam to be the true religion, and all Christians apparently are going to convert when this happens. All other religions are going to be totally eliminated as well, and Jesus will be the sole ruler of the earth. Every single animal that's harmful is going to be completely domesticated, and there's going to be a lot of rain and a plentiful amount of crops and food, and everything's going to be great. There's not going to be any weapons for war or anything like that. Everything's going to be used for the good of humanity. But the thing is, the reign of Jesus is only going to last for 40 years. And during that time, he's going to be regularly going to the city of Mecca. 21 years into his reign, it's said that he's going to marry and have children. And 19 years later, he'll pass away. Now, he'll be buried in Medina next to the Prophet Muhammad, where he will also await the day of resurrection. So when Jesus dies, all the believers will also die peacefully. And unbelievers will be left alone, left behind to just fully indulge their evil passions. Gog and Magog come at number 5. Well, before the reign of Jesus happens, the invasion of Gog and Magog will happen. Now this one is mentioned in the Quran in Surah 18 verses 83 to 99, as well as Surah 21 verse 96. Gog and Magog are represented by 2 nations that are going to have a massive army, and they're going to invade Palestine from the north, and they'll also besiege Jesus as well as his followers. And Jesus at that time is going to pray to Allah to save them, and that's when Allah is going to respond by sending this insect plague that's going to destroy all of those armies. Now, one of the last signs before the end will be an amazing miracle that's going to happen. The sun is actually going to rise in the west. Normally it's in the east. Another minor sign is the smoke. So according to the Quran, there's going to be this cloud of smoke that's going to arise and just cover the entire earth. Now when this happens, it's going to cause a lot of suffering on the planet. Now number 2, the caliphate, which is the seat of Islamic authority, will be established in the Holy Land. Now a lot of Muslims have a hard time with this because they're not necessarily sure what the term Holy Land actually means. Some say it refers to Palestine, and if it does refer to Palestine, that means that this prophecy hasn't happened yet. And some Muslims believe that this refers to Saudi Arabia, and if it is Saudi Arabia, then this prophecy was fulfilled 1400 years ago. And the final sign of prophecy that I want to mention dealing with the end times in Islam is the 3 trumpets. So after the gathering of the people that I mentioned to Syria from around the world, the first of the 3 trumpets will blow. The first is called the trumpet of terror, and that's going to be like a wake-up call. That's going to put a lot of fear in the hearts of people, like, oh my god, the end is coming. Then there's going to be a second trumpet, and that one is called the trumpet of swoon. This will make every single creature in heaven and earth earth die, except God and except anyone that God chooses to spare, as well as the martyrs who are alive in paradise. They will all be fine. Now when the universe is totally empty of all life, Allah will declare that He's all powerful and the God of all. 3 times Allah is going to shout, I am the mighty one, and then again 3 times He's going to say, to whom does the kingdom belong to? Then obviously there's going to be no answer back, and He's going to say, it belongs to the only one God, the conqueror. During the time between these 2 trumpets, that's when Allah is going to create a new heavens and a new earth, and when it's complete, that's when the final trumpet is going to be blown, and that is the trumpet of resurrection. So let's jump into this episode. Starting at number 10, the first sign is earthquakes. The hour, which is known as the day of resurrection, will not be established till earthquakes will increase in number. Now that's from the Hadith Bukhari volume 9 book 88. So when you take a look, between the 11th and the 18th century there were 64 earthquakes. Now in the 19th century that number was around 47 earthquakes, and in the 20th century there have been approximately 313 earthquakes. Then now in the 21st century there have been approximately 380 earthquakes. So Muslims believe that we are actually living in one of the end time signs right now. Next is what the Prophet Muhammad said, the hour will not be established till the people compete with one another in constructing high buildings. This is found in Bukhari volume 9 book 88, Hadith 237. He also said, when you see naked barefoot ones becoming leaders of men, that is one of its signs. When the shepherds of lambs compete in constructing tall buildings, that is one of its signs. So Muslims look at places like Dubai in particular, and structures like the Burj Khalifa, which stands at 828 meters tall. Also the Jeddah Tower in Saudi Arabia, after completion it's going to be the tallest building in the world, which will stand at 1008 meters, as well as many other tall buildings in the Arab world. The next sign is the hour will not be established till a man when passing by a grave of someone will say, would that I were in that place, and that's in Bukhari volume 9 book 88. Now this is believed to be describing anxiety and stress and depression levels nowadays being so high. So the belief is that we are heading in a direction where people would be happier if they weren't even alive. Next up at number 7, in the words of the Prophet Muhammad, he said, trade will become so widespread that a woman will be forced to help her husband in business. Now of course there's nothing wrong with women in business and helping their husbands grow their businesses. When you look at the time that the Quran was actually recorded, that wasn't the norm. It was the man that made the money. So you fast forward to our day and age now, it's common that women are working and starting businesses and helping their husbands also start businesses. Also in the Hadith, you'll find this statement, O Muhajirun, which are immigrants from Mecca to Medina, you may be afflicted by 5 things. God forbid that you should live to see them. If fornication should become widespread, you should realize that this has never happened without new diseases befalling the people, which their forebearers never suffered. So the word to take note of is diseases there, because STDs like HIV as well as others are very widespread, a lot more than before. The next one is from the Quran, Surah 75 verses 6 to 9. When is the day of resurrection? So when the sight becomes dazed and the moon becomes dark and the sun and the moon are brought together. So the sun and the moon, as you can see, will lose its brightness, lose its heat, will become dark, and the moon will also become dark. This is one of these signs. Imagine looking up and you're like, hey, it's daytime, but like it's so dark. Son, where'd you go? The sign that comes in at number 4 is divorces will be a daily occurrence. And that's in the Hadith according to Alama Sarafini and Awal Yam al-Qiyamah. So when you take a look, 41% of marriages end in divorce in America. There's one divorce approximately every 36 seconds. That's nearly 2,400 divorces per day, which works out to be 16,800 divorces a week and 876,000 divorces a year. Makes you wonder why people are getting married if they're just gonna divorce. I don't know. Well, that's probably another topic for another video. So the Euphrates will reveal a treasure of gold, and many people will actually lose their life fighting over it, each one of them hoping that they'll get their hands on the treasure. And that's in Sahih Muslim book 41 verse 6918. Sign number 2 is going to be an Abyssinian, aka a Habesha leader with thin shins, will destroy the Kaaba. Now the Kaaba is what Muslims refer to as the house of God and is located in Mecca, and Muslims all year round perform the pilgrimage called Hajj, which is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. So as you could imagine, if this thing is destroyed, that would be a big deal. And by the way, that term there, Habesha, is used to refer to both Ethiopians and Eritreans as a whole, just in case you guys were wondering. And by the way, this is found in Sahih Muslim book 41 verse 6951. And finally, let's talk about the Mahdi, or the guided one. He's going to appear and be the Imam of the Muslims, and this is found in Sunan Abu Dawud book 36 verses 4272. The Mahdi is the redeemer of Islam who, according to some Islamic traditions, will actually appear and rule for 5 or 7, 9 or 15 years, all depending on the different interpretations of the different schools of thought in Islam. So there's no direct reference to the Mahdi in the Quran. Only in the Hadith you'll find mention of the Mahdi. And in most Islamic traditions, the Mahdi will arrive with Isa, who is Jesus, to defeat the Dajjal.
One of the biggest signs in Islam is alcohol. It is mentioned in one of the Hadith that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, once said, "From among the portents of the hour, or the following, the drinking of alcoholic drinks will be very common, and illegal sexual intercourse will prevail." So alcohol is very widespread and consumed by majority of the people. Alcohol is very glorified in the media, TV shows, music, and social media. So next up, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, once said, "God forbid that you should live to see them." If fornication should become widespread, you should realize that this has never happened without new diseases befalling the people which their forebears never suffered. So if you guys don't know, fornication is basically sex between people before marriage. So this is very true, as there are many diseases such as HIV and AIDS that are out of control due to sex outside of marriage. It is so out of control to the point where it's kind of important to have STD clinics and campaigns about safe sex. Such diseases never really existed in ancient times, and in today's world it is such a common occurrence. So next up, we're going to be talking about a hadith by the Holy Prophet where he said that there will be an abundance of illegitimate children. So if we look at the world as it is today, this is a massive prophecy where it's very true right now. So even if we look at some of the statistics, a country like the USA had 40.7% of its children that were born outside of marriage in 2012 alone. This is a huge modern phenomena, as it seems to be very clear-cut prophecy coming true, made about 1400 years ago, which is kind of crazy to think about. So a lot of these signs of the Judgment Day or the final hour were mentioned by the Holy Prophet himself. And in a hadith, it is mentioned that he said, "The hour will not be established till a man, when passing by a grave of someone, will say, 'Would that I were in this place.'" If I heard this statement while growing up, I would be really confused as to why somebody would say that. But looking at the world it is today, in this day and age, when there's an increased number of people who are going through depression, who have high levels of anxiety and stress. So as much as it makes sense, it kind of sucks as well that we are headed in a direction where people would be happier if they passed away instead. So on number 6, we're going to be talking about one of the greatest Judgment Day signs made by the Holy Prophet. So this specific Judgment Day sign is basically the increase of the number of earthquakes. As he said, "The hour will not be established till earthquakes will increase in numbers." So what's crazy to think about is the fact that between 11th century to the 18th century, there were only about 64 earthquakes. In the 19th century, there were about 47 earthquakes. In the 20th century alone, there have been around 319 earthquakes. So in a span of 17 years, there's already been about 380 earthquakes. So this is definitely one of the remarkable signs that were mentioned about 1400 years ago, which is kind of crazy to think about. So moving on to number 5. So another sign that the Holy Prophet mentioned was that people would compete with one another trying to build the tallest building. As it is mentioned in one of the hadiths, he said, "The hour will not be established till the people compete with one another in constructing a high building." In fact, there are many recorded evidence of him saying this or something similar to this. Another thing that he mentioned was that the people that would be competing to build the tallest building would be Arabs. And now if we look at the world today, the tallest building in the world is in Dubai. And by 2020, Saudi Arabia will complete the Jeddah Tower, which will be the new tallest building of the world. Another remarkable sign that the Holy Prophet mentioned was that the Earth's rotation will change. He basically said that the Earth will be rotating in the opposite direction. As he said, the hour will not be established till the sun rises from the west. So I know right now the sun rises from the east, but the crazy part about this prophecy is that it is proven to be true by scientists. So scientists say that the rotation of the earth is going to diminish. So the earth will keep slowing down until to the point where it's not able to support anymore. So what will happen is that once the earth stops rotating, it is believed that it'll start rotating in the opposite direction, kind of like a spring. And when that happens, the sun will be rising from the west. So number 3, we're going to be talking about the hadith where the Holy Prophet once said, trade will become so widespread that a woman will be forced to help her husband in business. And this is quite an amazing prophecy. Most people living in the society today will not really think about it, and there's definitely nothing wrong with women working in general or helping their husbands in business. But if we think about during the time of the Holy Prophet, which was 1400 years ago, so the 7th century, so the norm during his time would be that the husband would make all the money for the family. Fast forwarding now, it is really common for a woman to be working and to be in a really high position. So comparing the norm that existed about 1400 years ago compared to what we have today, it's kind of hard to believe that somebody could make such a prediction. So number 2, so in Islam, another prophecy that was presented by the Holy Prophet for the final hour was regarding people's sexuality. He basically said that people will indulge in homosexuality and lesbianism. It is starting to become really common in our world to see homosexuality, and is very normalized. Couples with the same gender can legally get married now in some parts of the world as well. So another very common thing that exists in this day and age that was mentioned by the Holy Prophet is interest in usury. He said, a time is certainly coming to mankind when only the receiver of usury will remain. And if he does not receive it, some of its vapor will reach him. As the world it is today, when we try to buy a house, we're almost obligated to get a home loan,